Thanks everybody for having us. Thanks to Arc.dev for putting this together, and we're excited to talk about diversity, inclusion, and remote work. I'm Joe Blair from Cota Capital. We're a B2B focused stage agnostic firm here in the Bay Area. I'm also the founder of Distributed Valley, and we run semi-annual remote startup expos to kind of feature the entrepreneurs working in this space. I'm excited to have an amazing lineup of speakers here today, and I'd love, like, just to get started, I'd love if our panelists here could just briefly introduce themselves, who you are, what you work on, and I'll ask just in terms of an order, Michelle, Ruben, and then Darren. So Michelle, you want to kick things off?
Sure, thanks, Joe. So hi everyone, I'm Michelle. I'm based out of San Francisco, and I'm a talent and ops partner at Under Armour Connected Fitness. So that's where we're working on fitness apps such as Map My Run and MyFitnessPal. My specialty is focusing on recruiting, specifically on how we attract diverse talent and retain them, create inclusive hiring processes, and sharing equitable practices. Before coming to Under Armour, I worked at a string of various startups across the Bay Area. And I'm just really excited today to share the stage with Joe, Darren, and Ruben to talk about perspective and experiences.
Awesome. Thank you, Joe and Michelle. So my name is Ruben Harris. I'm the CEO of a company called Career Karma. And what we do is match career transitioners to job training programs so they can get high-paying jobs in tech in about 3 to 12 months. We work with about 450 job training programs focused on software engineering, design, and data science. And what makes our platform unique is not only will we match you with the right job training, we'll give you support during the program, during the job search, and for the rest of your life. Obviously, COVID-19 had a big impact for us now that we have 47 million people that are unemployed. And I'm really excited to talk about this because most of the people that are being laid off are women and people of color. And now we have over 300,000 people coming to us every single month, which gives us a very unique perspective on what's going on. So thank you.
Yeah, awesome work you're doing. Darren Buckner here, co-founder and CEO of Workfrom. Workfrom is a super connector for remote workers. We built what is now the largest community and community-based platform for finding non-traditional places to work all over the world. So in every city, places to get work done as a remote worker, as an independent professional. And like almost every business, COVID-19 has affected ours. And about a month ago, we launched what is now a sort of premium network to connect remote workers with each other based on the things that they need, their objectives, whether that's hiring, learning, finding new teammates. And we do that through a number of ways based on work style, location, and other things. So kind of a smart connector for remote workers, if you will.
Excellent. An all-star lineup here. So just given the context of everything that's happening in the news and across the country, we're clearly like not where we want to be from a diversity inclusion perspective. So I want the audience to get to know you all and to talk about kind of like some of the gaps, right? So I'd love if the panelists could share maybe a personal story or something you experienced or observed in kind of the realm of discrimination or exclusivity in your career and how you dealt with it.
Sure, I'm happy to jump in there and go first if it's okay.
Please.
Yeah, I think as a person of color, it's hard to think of times probably when you haven't really noticed things being different, right? So some of the things that jump out to me are often not being treated as if I belong in the room for the reasons that I'm there. That's something that you feel very often. Being the CEO of a company, when I show up in a room, not everybody is going to automatically assume that's something that I could do. So certainly not something that I do. So I'll get a lot of people who ask me, "Oh, what are you doing? Are you security here, or are you helping out with this or helping out with that?" Right? And I'm there for the same reasons as they're there, right? And that's often a disconnect for a lot of folks. And so you see these things play out over and over again, especially if you are usually one of very few people in a room. And for me, that's certainly been the case over my career. My career has largely been in software. Before I was a software engineer, and I'm self-taught, and so I kind of had this non-traditional way of getting there. But before I was a software engineer, I was actually a bouncer in nightclubs. And so, I've seen sort of the range of how people interact professionally, both on the kind of very social side as well as, the engineering side. And and it's everywhere. You know, it's very pervasive. It's usually these assumptions that people have, and then the things that lead, come from those assumptions and the way that people are treated. They're excluded. Some are included because of these assumptions. But those are the kinds of things that I've seen a lot of, and the list is long. You know, we could talk about this for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo that sentiment as someone that graduated from what I say. It's the best school you never heard of. It's a small school with only 2,500 people. A lot of times when you're in the room, they're like, "Oh, what school did you go to?" And if it's not an Ivy League school, right, then it's like, "Okay, well, who do you know? How did you get here?" But then, if you tell them you're an investment banker or that you play the cello, then it's okay, And so I think that's one thing. And then on the worker side, I would say there's a lot of things that I would say are exclusionary, like a credit score or a GPA or things like that. A lot of times people use GPA or credit score as a judgment for your abilities. I had a 2.98 GPA, for example. And that's not because I'm dumb. I was also in clubs throwing parties for Jermaine Dupri in Atlanta when I was 19 years old during my college year. And so I think, but I learned a lot of things that helped me do what I do today. And so I think that if you're in the tech industry and you didn't come from the places that are typical, it's very difficult for people to assess talent that if there's no credential at all. And I think now that we're in this remote work world, you're going to see like millions and billions of people that didn't go to college that is an Ivy League school, which most people didn't go to. And so it's going to be very difficult for people to assess talent and they don't start thinking deeper. So
yeah. You're here. Absolutely.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and I can share a little bit about my personal story as well. So I would say for most of my career, I've always been the only colored person on a team. And I think there's a lot of people that like resonated with that. And if you've ever been the only colored person on the team, there's a lot of pressure that is put on you being that only colored person. You always have to make sure you're on top of your game. You have to sound a certain way, look a certain way, make sure that doesn't come across too aggressive or too passive. And I always kind of feel like from my experience being that only colored person, you have this chip on your back where you're just kind of like, you need to exceed expectations, but you also know that others are going to minimize you exceeding your expectations. So it's a lot to deal with. And then you got to deal with those questions of like, let's talk about your heritage. Can you teach me how to be woke? And you have this onus and responsibility as the only colored person to teach that amongst your non-colored teammates. So overall, it's an exhausting experience altogether. Being a colored person, seeing those discriminations happen all around you, it's just a lot to deal with. And I think like with that, a lot of people have probably resonated with this, but haven't really had like the people around them to support them or share these frustrations.
Yeah.
Can I say something about it though? One more thing, because it's like
absolutely.
I don't ever like victimizing myself whenever I think about it. I think about it like a white piece of paper and there's a black dot on it. All right, so naturally people are going to pay attention to the thing that's different on the page, right? And if people are automatically assuming less of you or underestimating you, then it should be easy for you to exceed your expectations. So I actually see it as an advantage when people actually don't think of me as what I am fully capable of, because it's easy to exceed their expectations. So that's something to keep in mind.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Go ahead, Darren.
I'd say I think it's Michelle and Ruben both make fantastic points. A lot of how you may deal with this personally is based on your perspective with it. I think that what often happens for all of us is that we're put into these boxes, or we're put into positions that people think that we should be in or whatnot, and it's up to us to just decide how we want to necessarily address that. And the reality is there are a number of disadvantages by being put into a box, right, by your peers. That's certainly a case, but it doesn't mean that those disadvantages will stop you from being able to reach your full potential. These are the kinds of disadvantages that we want to work to, remove. There's no doubt about it. But it can be a motivator. It can be a way for you to show and surprise, and and show up in ways that they wouldn't expect, and therefore draw attention to you in ways that you might enjoy. So, you really can, I think, craft these these different situations to what works for you. But having to do that is a problem, right? Like having to go that extra mile, having to craft it differently is what we're trying to get away from. And that's one of the things I'm also very excited about with remote work is getting people out of these boxes. Is really hard to put people in boxes when you aren't working with them in very traditional ways. When the history that you bring to the table doesn't really line up with what you're now how you're now working. I think that's a big opportunity for remote work to help in that way.
Yeah, that's a perfect transition, Darren, because the next thing I was going to ask you guys was really, given the context of this remote work revolution, what do you feel is the impact on diversity and inclusion, and how does it move us towards the future we all want to see in this category?
I mean, I think it's a huge boon to diversity and inclusion because now you don't have to move to a big city. The reason, like, I had to move to San Francisco. The way that people told me to break into tech was quit your job, leave everything you know, go to San Francisco. It's a magical place, and you'll figure it out. But you don't have to do that. You don't have to do that anymore, right? Because everything is virtual. We're on this conference virtually. A lot of people are parents that, like, even if they wanted to, they can't do that. Even and like most of the people in our community are actually parents and people of color and women.
That's right.
And so it's super interesting to see what it does for them. What I would say, though, that I hear a lot in the future work, that I don't hear a lot in a lot of the rooms when we're talking about future work, I think something that's going to be very, very important for people to understand is how to develop their writing skills. Because to be able to, I think Michelle was talking about the way you communicate, right? And learning the language and the lingo, like like financial world has a certain lingo, tech world has a certain lingo. And so it's hard enough to do that verbally, but doing it through writing is difficult. Understanding how to drop the right emoji or the right GIF in the Slack channel to express yourself so people can feel you and understand your personality is difficult. And if you're not used to that, it can be very hard. So,
yeah, those are fantastic points. When I was listening to you talk about that, Ruben, I was thinking to myself, in many ways, you have to learn how to work differently when you're working remotely. So you as an individual, but also the people you're working with, and in that, there's a lot of opportunity. We don't come with the same assumptions, and we have to figure it out for ourselves. So learning to communicate remotely is already a challenge. It's already something you have to do new. It then doesn't have the same barriers, it doesn't have the same sort of connotations that it may have if you're working in an office with a group of folks. And there maybe is some opportunity for us to really rewrite the script, right? It can in many ways be an equalizer, I think, in how we work with each other. I think some of the other benefits of that are that, you're not going to bring the bias of being in the same room, the things that you have learned and pattern matching that you do because of what you bring to the table and having worked with people in that way. I think that's another big opportunity for the future of remote work and how it's going to help, bring diversity and inclusion to the forefront. But the thing that I get most excited about, and I'll throw this out there, and I can talk about this all day, but I really do think that removing location, dependencies is how we get to more diverse teams and how we actually allow communities and individuals who can't be at a location, who are locked out because they can't be in a place, and the places where people are getting sourced, the places where people are getting their connections. I think that it really has a huge opportunity to equalize in that way, to bring dollars from other places into communities that certainly need it, right? I remember when I was a younger engineer, I used to work for a company in the Bay Area, and I was bringing dollars into Portland, where I was living at the time. And it's a great way to bring money from other economies and bolster your local communities. I'm really excited about the opportunities to do that for communities that are traditionally underserved as well.
Yeah, I would say following what Darren is saying, if you're a company that's still trying to consider moving to remote or maybe go back to an in-office setting, if you're using diversity as a reason to move remote, I think it's really important to acknowledge that a remote setting is really only going to unlock the door. As a company, you still actually need to put in the work to open the door and bring that diverse talent in. Otherwise, you're just going to find the same homogenous talent, just not in your central HQ city. So it's very important to make sure that you're holding yourself accountable while going through this shift and making sure that you're going to acknowledge the new set of challenges that will come while going remote.
Yeah, just to echo some of what I heard from the panelists. I love the idea of or the phrase remote being the great equalizer, but as Michelle was saying, it also comes with these challenges that you have to address proactively. And I also love what I heard earlier, just about that there are different dimensions of diversity, right? It's not just about what you look like, right? There's LGBTQ issues, there's location issues. You happen to be born in the middle of the country. Should that mean like you have some disadvantage? Family situations, maybe you have to take care of young kids, maybe you have to take care of elder parents, ageism type issues, and even personality issues, right? Like, are you an introvert or an extrovert? Extroverts traditionally are more successful in the office, but maybe introverts have more of an advantage to be more equalized in the remote setting. I think you guys are making some excellent points. So obviously we're not, we're somewhere along the journey of where we want to be. We're not at the end, but we're also not at the beginnings, because many remote teams have already embraced diversity, including international hiring, and have had to grapple with some challenges like cross cultural communication, with time zones, different cultures, multilingual team members. So in your experience, how have you seen companies deal with some of these issues, and what have been some of the learnings?
Our company is global. We've been remote from day one. So we got a team in the U.S. We got a team in Philippines, UK, Ukraine, Puerto Rico, and a bunch of other places. And the thing is you have to be not just a good communicator, you also be a very good manager of time, right? And so like a lot of people that come from different backgrounds don't even know how to use Google Calendar properly, or even like a Calendly properly. So you got to be really good about understanding time zones and scheduling, and having like daily check-ins with people, and make it to stay on top of a process. And you also have to have systems in place in order to know what's happening across time zones, especially when you sleep, when people are still working on their shift. Like we use a tool called Hubstaff that allows you to track a lot of different things, and in addition to a bunch of other tools. But I think that time management is probably one of the biggest things. And going back to what I said about language before, language is super, super, super important to understand. So the reason I keep talking about language is because my first language is Spanish. And growing up, I couldn't speak English going to school. And so I grew up with a Spanish Southern accent in Atlanta, and it was like very difficult to communicate. And then like even in our organization, like the team in Ukraine doesn't speak the greatest English. My co-founders are Russian. And so figuring out a way for us to all communicate in the best way matters. You also got to take into account some people have a certain slang, right? So some people, even the way that they type might be slang, right? So just the way that you do that, I think is a big deal. But for us, I would just say time management and being able to understand that people have their own way of talking, try to getting clear on the point, and just being really good at writing is what's the most helpful, in making sure that we have consistent either daily or weekly check-ins to get our things done.
Yeah, fantastic points. We're also a 100% remote team, have been from day one. Not quite to Ruben's level. I don't have teams in so many different countries, but definitely in a couple different countries. And we've used time zone as an advantage in many ways. So we look to find teammates who are offsetting in time zone. That way we can have sort of a full cycle of coverage for different things if we need it. There's ways to lean into time zone differences so that you can get the most productivity and the outcomes that you seek as a team. And that's one way that you can kind of craft remote work and the experience that it brings to your company in a way that I think is an advantage. But time zone also is one of the biggest challenges of working remotely. If you don't have a good amount of crossover, it can make for some types of communication very challenging, which is why I'm always an advocate of really leaning into the asynchronous communication as much as possible. For instance, on our team, we have one video call with everybody a week. That's it. Like we try to limit the amount of time that we're on video, with a larger group, because it's not necessary. Frankly, we can learn to communicate asynchronously, and not only does it help us be very intentional about how we communicate, but it also creates a record. It creates a record so that those who maybe in their evening or maybe in their early morning, can consume this information in the ways that work best for them. And so I think that it's really important to kind of look at communication, look at time zone, look at cultural differences, and try to figure out how you can use those to your advantage in many ways, but also how you can adjust the operations of your company, the systems that you have in place, so that it can really allow people to do their best work wherever they are and however they want to do that. Because I think that's where you really start to achieve, the outcomes that remote work can certainly promise for a company. So, I always think about it's the person behind the laptop more than it is the tools themselves, right? The tools allow us to connect. They allow us to keep some continuity in the ways that we're communicating, but we have to think about really supporting the person behind the laptop and celebrating the fact that they are where they either need to be or want to be, and we don't need to be changing or trying to move everybody into one specific, mold. Like, we really want to leverage that as much as possible.
Yeah, I would say at Under Armour, we are a global company. We have teammates all over the world. So we're constantly working through time zones, different languages, cultures. It's something that's always on top of mind for us as a company. So that's where we heavily lean on inclusion and equity. We try to be mindful of time zones, provide prep materials so our employees are ready to go when we go to meetings. They also just work really well on making sure that everyone has time to speak during meetings and their voice is heard. I think echoing what Darren said, it's a really great opportunity to connect with your international teammates, to have a new perspective, learn a new way or approach to solving a problem that you might not have thought about before. But I would say one thing that does come across with working internationally is for managers and teammates to be really respectful of time. There are many days I start my day at 5 a.m. because I'm connecting with our team in Hong Kong. So it's really important for me that I need to log off by 1 p.m. So it's just like having those times or setting those boundaries where you're not going to work the traditional 9 to 5 schedule because you're connecting with your international team and making sure that you have balance. Because in remote work, I think it's very hard to unplug. And then when you add in the international factor, it could be you're on your laptop forever and you're not taking any breaks, you're not unwinding. So it can become very overwhelming. So it's really important as a manager of a remote team that's working internationally to reinforce to your team, hey, you've been up since 5 a.m. You should really log off, take the rest of the day off, get back to it tomorrow.
Yeah, what I love about what each of us have been talking about here is the humanity that remote work is bringing into the picture. I think what we've seen in COVID, with the outcome of COVID-19 and the kind of forced remote work or the forced work at home for so many different people, is that we're starting to see people as humans a bit differently. We're starting to understand the challenges that folks have individually, maybe things that we just didn't see before. There's a collision of worlds that is happening, and that is making us understand that, hey, there is a human, there's a lot of humanity in what we need to be thinking about when we're working with each other, and that's coming to the forefront because we can't hide it. We can't compartmentalize it. It is there, and it's always been a part of us, but now we're having to, I think, grapple with it and reconcile that as teams in different ways. But I think that's going to be a big benefit. I think we're going to get to know our teammates in ways, and we probably already have, in ways that we wouldn't have otherwise. And hopefully that's something as leaders of companies we can carry forward and think about as we start to, welcome other people to our company, and also as we work with our teammates moving forward. It's, how do we support that whole person? How do we, really give the kind of support that does address the challenges and the different makeups and the different cultures and the different locations and all these things, the complexity that is the person. How do we bring that to our work and make it be okay and celebrate it for everybody?
Yeah,
I think.
That's a really great point that Darren made. Like, you're now seeing someone beyond their work personality. You're getting a glimpse into their home, who they are. So having that compassion is so much more essential than it ever was before. If you can tell that someone's on a video call and you can tell that maybe their kid is trying to get their attention in the background, just take a moment, be like, hey, like, it's fine. Like, go ahead, see what they need. We can get back to this in a few minutes. I think little moments like that are going to take you so far in working remotely.
Yeah, I mean, you also think about compassion and remote work from an inclusion perspective. You got to realize that, most people got a smartphone, but a lot of people don't have a laptop. Less than 60% of Black and brown people actually have a laptop or a computer. So as you're thinking about remote work as a future, there is a very big digital divide, not just with laptops, but even with Wi-Fi connection. A lot of people want to hire people from different backgrounds, but you got to realize that's actually a very big issue. If you want to do this right, you got to think about that.
I love that you brought that up, Ruben, because I think that's something that we don't think enough about. We don't plan enough for, and we have to create infrastructure that's going to allow our current teammates and future teammates to be able to do their best work wherever they are. And the reality is, there are a lot of people, the majority of people who we should want to work with, who we could work with. Talent is distributed evenly, right? But opportunity is not. So it's like there's a lot of folks out there who don't have the tooling, the infrastructure that they need in order to actually do their best work. And it's up to us to provide that. It's up to it's our responsibility as leaders, as people who are building out the future of work. We need to be thinking about how do we strengthen the infrastructure? How do we bring to people what they need? How do we provide that? How do we budget for it, right? How do we put money towards it so that we know that everybody's got exactly what they need? Because if they don't have what they need to do their best work, it's going to just add this layer of friction that is only going to make things worse. So I love that. It's something I'm actually trying to learn a lot more about myself right now. But what can we do personally? What can we do as a company to support our teammates and what they really need to do their best work?
Yeah, the common thread I'm hearing is that there are some challenges and disadvantages with going remote, but by using some common best practices around communication, training, making sure voices are heard, so some kind of improved managerial techniques, you can actually turn some of those disadvantages into advantages. There was an interesting poll that came out where they polled employees and managers to see like how is remote work going, how is work from home going, and employees, it was off the charts. Everyone was saying life is so much better, but managers, it was actually worse. Managers saying, hey, this is way harder. So I think some of the things you guys are recommending are going to be helpful for managers to take on. I've kind of a more broad macro question for you all, which is, we've all seen, I mean, it's a really good thing that we've seen in that we've seen large corporations, we've seen VCs, we've seen important people all embrace Black Lives Matter, all kind of, post on their Twitter feeds that they care about this cause. And to be fair, that's a big step from where we were even a year ago. That wouldn't have happened. But my question is, what can leadership teams do? What can company leadership do to increase diversity on their team beyond just these proclamations on Twitter?
But you got to make a decision. I mean, this is the easy one. I think why are we looking for it starts with us, right? Like, we got to make the decision, the commitment to hiring the people that we want to see, in a diverse team. I mean, it's you hire, right? You write the check. You do what you have to do to make your team diverse. It's intentional. You don't sort of back into it and just hope that it works. You don't look for outside systems that are going to create the opportunities for you. You find the people and you hire them. Like, I feel like this is a very simple thing, and we really need to take some personal accountability in this. It's great to support outwardly. You should definitely be doing that. It's great to be wanting to see the systems that you've been relying on for many, many years, decades even, to help with this issue of inclusion and diversity. Absolutely. Fight for that. Talk about it. Make that something that you champion. But look in the mirror. Who are you hiring? it's not hard to find diversity if you open your eyes and you look for it, and you have to be intentional. And I think that if you do that, you're not only setting yourself up for success and meeting your objectives to getting a more diverse team, no doubt about that, but you're going to be a better company. The companies that don't understand and really lean into figuring out how to find and embrace diverse talent, they're going to be the losers, right? So you can't avoid it. You can't overlook it, and you can't wait for somebody else to help you do it. You got to just look in the mirror and make the decision to have your company reflect what you believe the rest of the world reflects, and I think it's just as simple as that.
Yeah, you can't fake it. You can't fake it, right? Go ahead.
I really like the whole made the hires on the wire statement that everybody's talking about. Yeah. Like I said, it's really not that hard. It's super simple. You're making all these players spend millions of dollars donating it to policy, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. But if you think about the amount of money that you've given to those causes, if you want to make a change in your company, you can actually take a portion of that and really change the structure internally, or allocate a large amount towards either hiring or making investments into founders from different backgrounds. It's not very difficult. The other thing that I think is important to keep in mind is, like, whenever I talk to chief diversity officers that look like me, a lot of times they don't have power. They don't have decision-making power, and they come from very nice backgrounds that are traditional, so that, like, that's justified, and, like, they're not even given metrics that they're held accountable to. They're given aspirational benchmarks, which I think is super dumb, because if you're running a startup, every VC, every founder will tell you want to have KPIs and goals that you set that are hard, right? How fast are you growing? How much revenue are you making in a month? All these different things. So if you're going to do that, why wouldn't you do it with your goals? It's like when you make a raise, you're going to tell them how you're going to use the money and how many hires you're going to make, right? Most of the work, if we're talking about remote work, the world is global, and most of the world is actually diverse, right? So it's not hard to find the talent. It's there. It really isn't.
What you focus on will improve.
Exactly.
I'll say it again. What you focus on will improve. That's the old notion. What you measure, what you focus on will improve. Exactly. And so, you focus on it, you measure it. Like you said, you have real numbers behind it, real objectives, real metrics. You focus on it, and it will improve.
I think something that could be super cool, though, is, like, if the employer starts getting involved in training talent. I actually think that, like, employers, like, if you look at globally, there's a lot of apprenticeships, a lot of things like that. So if you think about, like, the 47 million people that lost jobs, most of them are women and people of color.
That's right.
And millions of these jobs are gone permanently. So if you could create really strong on-ramps into these jobs, similar to, like, what Guild Education has done with, like, Walmart, to level people up into managerial positions from working from a front desk perspective, you could do something similar. Like, if I'm starting off as an Uber driver, maybe I can go into a training program, and then now, instead of cannibalizing my driver force, now I can be an engineer working for the company. So not driving is like working for the mailroom, right? So things like that can be super interesting. But I'm very fascinated with the employer's payer model, which essentially a lot of people only go to college for 4 years, and you work for a company for like 45 years or so, or you're working in corporate for 45 years. That's where you're getting most of your training. So and that's where most of the money is anyway. So I think that's interesting. So,
what do you think, Michelle?
Yeah, so I would say to make it more into, like, bite-sized pieces, depending on how big your organization is and where your company's at in terms of progress. I would say the first thing really for leadership to do is just to take a step back and scan their organization. I know we put a lot of pressure and expectations on leaders, and they have a lot on their plate, but sometimes they do forget these simple things just to see their organization and see how homogenous is it? Is it truly diverse? And having those conversations with their middle managers to see where's there kind of just a block in creating more diversity for our team. I think after that, another step could be, if your company already has employee resource groups, to join those employee resource groups, or even better, become an executive sponsor. use your title or your level to help these groups elevate even more and provide more spotlight and attention on the issues that they're facing. And I think one of the bigger things that any organization can do is tie their business metrics to diversity and inclusion. There is so many cases and studies out there talking about how D&I has a positive impact on the business. And at Under Armour, we go a little bit further than that. We have those goals for our executives. However, we tie it to their bonuses. So it's directly impacting them in a financial perspective. So I challenge other companies out there to do the same, because D&I is just not a checkbox. It's something that really does impact your business and how you're going to progress.
Yeah, that's fair. I love tying the money to it.
Yeah,
that's fantastic. I mean, Michelle's spot on with that. You tie the money to it and see what happens. Yeah.
I've never heard of that. That's brilliant. That's brilliant.
That is brilliant.
Kind of switching gears, we talk about what can company leadership do, but most of the people on the call are probably not, the CEOs. What can employees do to engage their leadership team if they feel the company's not doing enough?
Well, what I think is super cool about coming from a non-traditional background is you know how to recognize another hustler, right? They say a fisherman recognizes another fisherman from afar. Right? So like if you're from Atlanta, if I'm from Atlanta, and we came from like a certain neighborhood, a certain school, and we understand that we cut from the same cloth, it's easy to vouch for that person. If I was a former construction worker or a former bouncer, right, now I can connect with Darren because we got something that we're aligned with. And Darren was like, "Oh wait, you self-taught engineer like me? Oh hell yeah! I'm gonna refer you all day to the hiring manager, because the recruiter, and no shade to recruiters, a lot of times they're not the decision makers, right? And so a lot of times, like if you can get the engineer that's already in there to talk to the hiring manager and vouch for you, that's how it's gonna work, because the tech industry is very similar to the music industry, and I talk about this a lot. Right, the hardest part of getting in the music industry is not learning how to sing or play guitar. It's learning how to play your record for the right person. And there's arguably more people outside of the music industry that are at record labels, just like there's a bunch of talented people that aren't hired, right? And so what you got to do is find the people that are just like you to get you a job. And the facts are, most jobs are all find and come through referral. If you're applying online, you're missing out on 80% of the opportunities, because only 20% of jobs are listed online. So to answer the question, if you are internally at a company and you know how to recognize other hustlers, just vouch for them to the hiring manager and let it work. I think another thing to do too is figure out what are the technical things that your hiring manager is looking for if we're talking about technical talent, and share that with the people that are trying to get hired so that you can build projects that are relevant to them, because resumes don't really matter either. I've never got a job personally through the website or with my resume in investment banking and in tech. That's a fact at every company that I worked at. So keep it in mind.
Fantastic. Something we're working on right now is some very specific ways to help people refer other people, use their own people networks to help with this type of issue. When you're and through the lens of remote work. So most everything I do is through the lens of remote work these days. And when you lose these, or when you don't have these well-formed people networks because you are located next to each other, you have physical proximity next to the people that you work with, your peers. It also disrupts your ability to, I think, help other people advance their careers. And it's strange to create these really strong people networks when you are largely working in a quite an isolated fashion. And so we need to be thinking about how we do that better, because as humans, as very social creatures, like one of the best things that we do is we create networks. We create networks of people. Like Ruben was just saying, like we recognize each other. We recognize the similarities. We're like the differences. This is what we do. It's very innate. And we can use that to help benefit our peers. And so that's one of the things we're looking at very specifically. And there's a lot of upside in using our personal networks to help with some of these challenges, specifically some of the diversity and inclusion challenges. Being an advocate for our peer groups meeting others and recognizing others like us and getting them in front of the right people, like Ruben said. I think that's a huge opportunity there. I heard the stat you said there, Ruben, that 80% of the jobs aren't posted online. Like, I never heard that, but it rings true. It makes sense, right? Most of the work that I've ever gotten in my career, and I've got some great positions, some great work. It's been because somebody vouched for me, somebody turned me on to something, and I think we got to do much more of that for each other. And do that intentionally with our peers that we want to see in positions that matter, right? And the places that we want to see the difference, we got to be proactive in that. And just to touch on something else real quick, if you are feeling as an employee, as a teammate, that your company isn't addressing the diversity and inclusion in the ways that they should, which I'm not sure if that's what you were alluding to with your question, Joe, but if that's part of it. Hopefully there's already a conversation going on. Hopefully there's already a forum in which people have been talking about this. And so just be active. Like, you definitely want to be active there. If you don't feel safe, you try to figure out who can you, or how do you find your safe space inside of your organization to have these conversations, because it's very important to be active and not be quiet about it if you feel like it's not happening well. And I think it's okay right now. I think we've entered into a cultural shift. I think it's okay right now to speak out, to find your power in this. And be okay with it. Don't. It's time to shed some of the personal concerns about how this might look. Or I think you're in a time right now where it is wholly appropriate to be talking about how are we addressing this as a group, as an organization. How are we looking at opportunities to help? It's wholly appropriate. In fact, it's upon all of us to find the opportunities to do that. I think you gotta look at all the opportunities. So I would say, try to find your voice, try to find your power, and right now is your time to talk about this. Talk about it with your peers, but also go to your managers, go to folks who are in positions of power, who have the ability to help with some of these things. Like, just be vocal. It's time. And I think you'll see that you'll be well received right now too. And if you aren't, I should tell you a lot. I mean, it's also a lot of people being found out right now. A lot of people are being found out about how they really are approaching these things, what they really care about, what their real values are. And, I'm not advocating that you do something that's going to like sort of, accelerate your departure from the company or anything. I don't want that to happen. But what I'm saying is, understand who you're working with, who you're working for, where their values are. And a lot of people being found out right now. So having these conversations are tough, but they're important, and they're important for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, echoing off of what Darren said, it's really interesting, like, how we see our leadership and leaders when it comes to these types of topics. I think everyone probably feels that frustration of, like, why isn't our CEO doing more? Why isn't our COO saying a statement or something like that? And I think this is really a time to practice some empathy, because there are a million things coming to your leadership in different directions of how are we going to get through the business with COVID hitting everyone and impacting everyone in different ways. How are we going to switch to remote? There's so many things to think about. And it's not to say that leadership does not care about diversity and inclusion. I hope your leadership doesn't care about it. Like, I hope it's something top of mind. But when there's so many things on their plate, it's time to practice some empathy and approach them to be like, this is still really important to us as we're pushing through COVID, as we're pushing through a new remote work style. So I would say definitely approach your leaders. Maybe this new, like, if you're in a new remote setup, your leaders might be more approachable by just messaging them on Slack or sending an email, compared to if you're in an office, you're probably a little bit nervous to go into their office or swing by their desk. So really try to read the situation of how you can best approach your leaders. It could be through, just like I said, a ping or a Slack, or it could be through like a community forum if your company has town halls or anonymous Q&A or engagement surveys. Your company and your leadership is reading that. And I think, just because it's top of mind for you doesn't mean it's not top of mind for them. They just have a million things going on. And as an employee, it's really for you to feel empowered to bring that top of mind and top of priority to your leadership team.
Yeah, fantastic point. You got to have some grace right now. These are difficult times on a number of levels and a number of fronts. So yes, think about the people. It is people first. Have some grace with everybody. I do think it's time for us to find our voice in this as well, and And these are tough subjects. These are tough things for everybody to figure out how to reconcile. But it's important that we do. And so we do have a lot of priorities, but this has to be top. It's got to be. It's our time. It's how we're going to ultimately get to where we need to be. And we can't waste times like this. We can't waste moments like this. We've got to really leverage them for as much as we can.
I would also say too, like, since all these companies have made pledges, like big old pledges to help with diversity, there's a lot of people that have great hearts that want to do something, but they don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And so if you do know what to do and you are on the ground and you're an employee, inform them or inform whoever they've put in charge. A lot of times the person that they place in charge of allocating the money it's not diverse.
Yeah.
So you're probably gonna have to give them some guidance on how to allocate those dollars or those in-kind donations, because a lot of these pledges aren't dollars. They're a number that's a value. So something else to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Indeed. Point. And yeah, one thing I'm seeing in the comments here is balancing this wanting to speak out with the reality of how hard it is to for a lot of people who are unemployed today. And I was on a panel the other day with a diversity inclusion person, and she said, like, make no mistake, being the diversity person and speaking up is still not without risk. Like, yeah, we have all these headwinds, or we have all these wins behind us right now, and there is pressure coming from outside the organization, which is powerful. But I think people are saying, be cautious, smile, and do it in the right way. And like Darren said earlier, if you're hitting a brick wall, then figure out a way to get to a leadership team with that inspires you.
Yeah.
So, like, if you do want to speak out too, sometimes it is good to have an ally that's powerful, that can kind of that already has a microphone that nobody would dare cross if you did speak out. So if they stand there with you while you're speaking and you're making a voice heard, then you have some protection. Not that you don't always need that, but allies are good. There's actually a really good quote about this. Malcolm X, he talked in the autobiography of Malcolm X. There's like a little white girl that asked how she could help in something that he was working on. And he told her that she couldn't do anything because it was like an all black thing, but it was something that he regretted his whole life. So allies are important, so something to keep in mind. And I really like what Lil Baby said, and then you saw that he came out called Bigger Picture that you should all listen to, where he talks about how this is big and black and white. Like we have a lot of power when we're united.
That's right.
Love it.
All right. So,
yeah.
Do you want to give me last words?
Go ahead.
To wrap things up.
I was just going to say. No, I think we covered a lot of ground here. A lot of great points in terms of best practices. I think we really kind of went after the issues. So I just want to thank Darren, Michelle, Ruben for being on this panel and sharing kind of your wisdom and your experience. I learned something. I bet the people who are watching this learned something as well. So thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Peace.